Reality. What does that mean to you? Well, today we're looking at the real reality behind stories and the layers that brought them to life.
It was then that the reality really sunk in for me that the family was gone, we were fractured, the relationship with my father had started to crumble at that point, and I was still trying to navigate what kind of relationship I could still have with him.
When I started working there, he was married to his wife, and they had two sons, Michael and Alan, and that's all I ever knew of him having a family. I worked for him for over 20 years. Never had any inkling there was any problems in the family.
Our immediate family was very close. I had a great relationship with both my parents, my brother included, just the four of us.
This is the story of a son on a quest to better understand his true reality. He grew up in a wealthy Chicago suburb. However, the tale of two lives was born after a call from the hospital. It was a stroke that changed everything. When you got a call from your mother that your dad had had a stroke, and what did she say to you on the phone that prompted your next call?
She had a really interesting experience, not only in the conversation with my father when he revealed the details around his stroke and then the aftermath, but the conversation raised curiosity on my mother's part.
Before we go any further, why was your mom in Arizona?
So around 2001, my mother had moved to Sedona. Prior to that, they had vacationed in Arizona, and my mother really loved the dry climate. And she was getting older, she wanted to spend more time there. And my father was on board with building a house out there. And I think my mother thought at the time eventually he would retire out there with her. So she went ahead, built a house out there, and then they were
together. Together they built a house?
They built the house, married? Absolutely, still married, together. That became the focal point for our Christmas holiday time together. We'd go out there and share that as a family. And that was really where we spent a lot of fun time in, last 20 years, for instance.
So she was out there when your dad had the stroke?
She was. I called the hospital really just trying to find out about my father's condition. I got a nurse on the phone and I identified myself and asked about how he was doing, and the nurse gave me all the details. She said that he actually went into the hospital for an elective heart valve replacement, and it was during that procedure that he had mild strokes. And as I approached the end of the conversation, I said, hey, I just want to make sure someone's checking on him. Can you let me know if anybody's been there to visit him and see if how he's doing? And she said, yes, your mother, your sister, and her baby have been there to visit him. And I said, oh, I don't think those are my relatives, but thank you, I'm glad someone's checking on him. Called my mother, and I said, we have some research to do. There's something going on here. We really uncovered that my father had a double life.
One of the really interesting features of this story is that Mike was able to track down a lot of actual legal documents in order to piece together the timeline and everything that he needed to know, or at least try to know, in order to determine when his father was where and who he was with and what he was doing. Mike looked over marriage certificates, divorce decrees. He looked through the help of investigators, through other public filings involved with his estate, probate filings, for example. So before he came to us, we said, well, how do you know a lot of these things happen? And he said, it's been my life's mission to figure everything out.
I thought that he was a normal family man. When I found out, I was surprised. It was like, first he was staying with this friend, and that happened to have been the second wife. And then from there, everything got exposed slowly.
Complete shock, because it shattered the image you had of who your father was and the relationship you thought you had with this man, this individual who had been a really big part of our lives. We had great memories growing up. Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, fishing with my father, family outings. Cubs were a big part of it. Bulls, Blackhawks, Bears, all of that. It was really, what you would think of with an ideal kind of childhood in the Chicago suburbs.
What made this feel like just not your normal affair?
Right. Well, we dug into it. And of course, we jumped on the internet and started doing searches on my father's name. And all of our names would come up associated with him. But then there were some other names that would also appear. And we'd go to different sites and do different searches. Same names would come up. So then we started searching on those names, and it would start to put a picture together. And because of the ages of the other individuals, we began to realize that this wasn't a recent relationship, that these were long-term relationships.